show on a streaming platform is a hit, you can be fairly assured that very soon there will be a litany of complaints over something or the other that has been a part of the show. It's a catch-22 situation, really. As creative makers and creative people vie for eyeballs and more shows clog up the streaming sites, there is a reason to try and do more and more outrageous stuff, eye-catching stuff to grab the viewer's attention. On the other hand, we seem to be becoming a really sensitive society and immediately run to the closest police station to file an FIR if we don't like a scene or any kind of a connotation in a show. It's become apparently much easier than just switching the channel. Now, in the midst of all of this are looming regulations over OTT or over-the-top platforms. These are basically streaming sites which have become very popular after COVID-19, even as cinema halls are still hobbling back, and more creative content is finding its way to these platforms. The context of our conversation today is the central government saying in the Supreme Court during a hearing that they're contemplating bringing in regulations for OTT. This comes after a petition in the Supreme Court asking for such regulations, and the centre has now been given 6 weeks to file its affidavit. It's already well known that some form of regulations are being considered. Guidelines may be out soon. One attempt has already been made to get these OTT platforms to self-regulate, but not much headway has been made there. So now, what impact would these regulations have on the creative juices that are flowing and the kind of fresh content that we're seeing on these streaming platforms? Content, honestly, that sometimes has broken taboos, has broken stereotypes, and doesn't seem to be a slave to commercial success or failure. To give us that perspective, I'm joined today by Anant Mahadevan, of course, a senior actor and screenwriter, and Sridhar Rangayan, filmmaker. Welcome to the both of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us today on the India Development Debate. Mr. Mahadevan, let me just get your take first off on whether you think that regulation of OTT content is even required.
Well, it's a huge question that you've posed, and I must go back a little before I answer this question, because if you go back to the television times, I mean, I've been running parallel to Indian television since 1983, and I've been around for 40 years on television before I stepped into the digital platforms, if I may say so. I just don't like the word OTT. It's as bad as Bollywood. So what I would try to say is that in '83, when Doordarshan was in its full swing, and we had the golden era of Indian television, commercial television, the so-called mandarins at Mandi House, they used to regulate a lot of content. I mean, if there was something drug-related, if there was something relationship-related, there was a lot of, and even if there was something religious, like the Bible was banned, or the sword of Tipu Sultan ran into a lot of controversy. And those days, it was all very, in a way, amicably solved at Mandi House, and it never became such a conflagration, if I may say so, and it never reached the courts in India, except for a few minor cases. Television used to self-regulate after the satellite channels came in the 1990s, and they were quite honest, because they had a department which actually made sure that they did not cross the line, they did not hurt anyone's sentiments. At the same time, creativity wasn't sacrificed. So, coming from that kind of a background, and since television, what do you think really gave OTT platforms or these digital platforms this kind of life? And how did they spring up suddenly? It's not just because of the pandemic. It's also because television is really gone down the drain, and we've had some terrible television happening in the last 2 decades. Yeah. With the daily soaps coming in. So no one's watching. And that gave a great impetus and an advantage and a platform to these digital platforms to come up with shows that in a way are really reflective of what Doordarshan did. I mean, we used to do those 13 episode series and 26 episodes and 52 episodes as a season. And what these web series are doing, it's the same format. And we actually come back full cycle to regulating ourselves once again. But what happened was, people thought that since they had escaped from the clutches of television, since they do not need to take any more permissions from the executives, the programming executives at channels, that gave them the freedom to do what they want. And I do not want to name the channels or the shows, but everyone knows what I'm talking about. And it really, that is where it went over the top, as you call it. Did it get its name because it really went over the top? Is that the reason why it's called OTT? And then it was indulging in sex and violence and terrible language. I mean, is this what we needed to get the audiences back to the small screen? Is this really what we need? I mean, I'm not sounding like a prude over here. I mean, I did the series called Scam as an actor, and there was a character in that called Cobra, which actually mouthed a lot of filthy language, but it sounded so correct. It sounded so authentic. And no one ever raised an objection to, filthy language and scam, because it was there in the correct place. So you see, everything in its context and everything within limits is what we need. And
the question then is, who decides?
Yes, I'll tell you.
Let me bring in Sridhar Rangayan as well, and let's keep this a conversation.
Want to finish this. Where are we coming from? You know, when you take this kind of advantage, you actually invite the wrath of the censors or whatever regulatory board, and then you're playing into their hands. So it is you who has been the bully, and you need regulation now. But then what are the kind of regulations, and whom it's applied for, and how do you do it, and without affecting the creativity, is what we've got to look into.
Okay, Sridhar, I want you to come in on this, and very interesting perspective from Anant Mahadevan, that perhaps the creative fraternity has called this upon themselves by taking too many liberties. Once one kind of a genre became successful, which had a lot of abusive language and violence, etc., everyone jumped on the bandwagon. Did we push the envelope too far? And this is why we stand at this juncture. Do you agree with that school of thought?
Yeah, I would like to kind of comment upon what Anandji said about self-regulatory systems of the television days. You know, what happened with that particular thing was, though it was supposed to be self-regulatory, it excluded a lot of voices. So most of the television channels for which we wanted to make programs on LGBTQ content, they said we are family audiences. We cater only to families. So they excluded completely LGBTQ content from their repertoire, and we didn't have any possibilities of either producing or telecasting any LGBTQ content during the satellite days. Whereas I would say the digital platform has enabled more diversity of content in terms of the, we can have more LGBTQ content or other contentious issues. So that actually is a big boon to independent filmmakers like me, who basically didn't have the facility of the satellite channels, or even I would say that theatrical possibilities, because I would be doing my independent, small budget LGBTQ films, which could not be put in theaters. For me, OTT platforms has been a big boon. I mean, 3 of my films have been on Netflix. And that has enabled me to reach out with my films to a large audience in India and across the world. Having said that, I do agree with Anandji's that there must be some kind of a self-regulatory system with the filmmakers and the content makers do put into place. You know, you cannot have a free-for-all, and I totally understand which OTT platforms Anandji is referring to, which I also have a big problem with. But again, what happens is you, as a free democratic country, I would say that everybody should be able to voice their, have the voice. And for me, having a regulatory system which is governed by the state government or the central government would be a big problem, because again, suppose you go to the censor board, none of the LGBTQ content would even get a certification. My first film, Gulabi Aina, was banned by the censor board because they considered vulgar and offensive. It was not vulgar and offensive at all. And that still remains in force. Anything to do with homosexuality gets an adult certificate, So these kind of regulatory bodies basically dampen and cut off marginalized voices. So I would actually say that no, we should not have a censor board kind of issue, but I would definitely go in for a rating system. I think Shambhalagal sir headed a committee a couple of years back, a tribunal, which was supposed to make recommendations to the government.
No, but one minute. Don't we already, by default, with the way these platforms are programmed, have a rating system? You already have an age mentioned and what the content is, whether there's violence, etc., mentioned with it. So there is already a rating system in place. You are well warned in advance whether you want to see it or not. If you apply the right filters, it will ensure that children under a certain age don't access that content. So that rating system is already there, isn't it?
But that again does not really kind of give a possibility where people are just using some really horrible language and there's so much of sex and nudity. I understand that there could be some possibility when you say that, like, okay, this has sex or violence, but having a porn film on a digital platform, I won't recommend that.
May I add to this? You see, the rating system is the rating system is as defective as the system, the A, U, and the other certificates on the big screen. You can actually see children watching adult movies in cinemas. So there is nothing to stop children clicking onto, and if it says it's adult content or it's graphic violence, and if there is a warning attached to it, they actually switch it on curiously to see what's happening. So we really can't depend on the rating systems. And even before the digital channels came in, there were so many sites on the internet that these children have accessed and corrupted their minds. So you see, on one hand, we have this terrible, like Sridhar correctly pointed out, the porn influenced kind of work. And on the other hand, you have violence and you have abusive language. And then you, on the third, I mean, if there's a third hand, you actually have something that people object to, either if it is a political reference or a religious reference or a traditional reference. Now, we got to be very clear as to what we are talking about. Are we talking about...
I think we should talk about that. No, we should, no, Mr. Mahadevan, we should talk about the elephant in the room. Obviously, when there is a set of guidelines that comes in, it will regulate everything, right? From, age-related content and violence, sex, nudity, etc. But we should address the issue in light of the litany of complaints that have been filed against several shows and what those are based on. And that is largely, if I were to categorize them all together in a broad brush, it is having sentiments hurt. Now, these could be religious sentiments. This could be that why has a certain political party been shown in a negative light. It could be why has a certain place been shown in a negative light because of the title of the show. So there is a whole range, a sweeping range of critique which comes in. How do you think a new system of regulation will take all of this into practice? As a creative person, as an artist, are you afraid that this will curb your creativity?
No, we have been witness to a lot of this in the past. When Mahesh Bhatt made Manzile Aur Bhi Hain, it was banned because of sexual content. When Kissa Kursi Ka was made, it was banned because of the emergency, the political content. So we've had cinema, people objecting to cinema, whether it's a Bajirao Mastani or anything, sentiments arising from everywhere. So this is not new to us. I mean, cinema has, we have experienced this on the big screen too. So now that it's sort of, being transferred onto the small screen, I suppose, you see, in India, anything that you do or you say will find an objection somewhere in some corner of the country. And somebody will put his hand up and say, I object. So it's up to, I think, somewhere to the makers themselves, to the creative team itself, to somehow regulate themselves. And they know, I mean, if you deliberately step on someone's foot just to create mischief, then you are inviting trouble. But if there is something controversial, I mean, Sridhar's film Evening Shadows was passed with a U or a UA certificate. It was not an adult certificate, and it so sensitively handled the homosexuality in a South Indian family, which is supposed to be a very traditional Orthodox family. I mean, if you have this kind of sensibility and sensitivity, I think there is no need to fear the regulatory board. But if it is people who are trying to be clever and trying to be smart and trying to deliberately light a fire, then they are the ones who are actually jumping up and saying, no, we don't need regulations. It's going to, affect our creativity. I don't see any creativity being affected whether I have made an Axel film called Red Alert, The War Within, or whether I have made something on police brutality recently called My Ghat. I mean, the censors passed it with a U certificate. So you see, it is the intention at the end of the day that comes through very clearly in a television show or a web show or a film. And the intentions, if they are harmful, and in the name of freedom of speech, that you actually cross boundaries and you do things that definitely not civil, or something that is not decent, then you are inviting trouble. So, and that is where I think the regulatory board has suddenly reared its head. It wasn't there all this time. So somewhere I think we are also guilty of sparking it off.
So I would say that good content is balanced content, and the creator is able to balance different viewpoints within a project, and not really do the a film or the digital content to provoke people. And that's very clear when you see a film or a digital film. You know that the intention of the filmmaker is, and that should be definitely not. And I think, but you should not put in regulations to curb this. The state should not intervene in it. And the same way, I'm really against this whole government saying that like all universities have to be, all international conferences held by universities have to be regulated and approved by the government. Now that's a huge clamp on the right to speak, right to freedom, right to speech, and that should not happen. Something like that, for me, if it happens with the digital platform, or for the matter, television or feature films, for me, it's a big dampener, because I really think the content creators should definitely have the right to express their views as they wish to. But I feel that, the content creator obviously has to be more responsible and sensible, but you cannot stop anybody from that. I would say that no regulation has worked across the world.
So,
and why do we need regulation in India?
Yeah, so self-regulation. So self-regulation is what you are pushing for, Sridhar. Anant Mahadevan, are you also pushing for self-regulation, or what are the kind of people you would want to be sitting on the equivalent of a censor board for OTT platforms? How would it even work when a lot of this content and most of the content is not generated in India, right? So this is international content which is running everywhere. So would this board of people then sit and decide what Indians see when this is widely available all over the world?
Well, I'm not sure what, the kind of regulations or the kind of rules that are going to be laid down. Again, this is very akin to foreign cinema being censored before they were shown on our big screens. So even foreign content was censored before. But I don't think it is really practical for them to sit down, because there are so many shows on television which have already come in. Are they going to regulate that, or are they going to look at content only from India? I would say that there should be something that should be this should be an autonomy given to the creative people, or the channels, or the digital platforms, because if they still do not feel responsible, and they still do not regulate themselves, then it's no point in shouting from the rooftops that we are being censored, or there is a board coming in to stop us from doing, because then you do not know who the members on the board are. They should be ideally members who are filmmakers, like maybe Shyam Benegal, Govind Nilani, or the like, who are very sensitive about things, and who know what is to what can go and what need not go, not should not go, but need not go. So if at all, they are appointing a board, I would say make it, very, very respectable filmmakers. I don't know whether they would even volunteer to come on such an act, but still, it's worth a look at. But otherwise, I feel that it's about time we pulled up our socks.